Here we go.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm so disappointed to not be there with you today. I've been looking forward to this for the last year. And the universe had other plans for me. So I developed some health issues that are keeping me home. But my spirits are high. I'm excited about the work. I'm excited about the symposium. I just need to get my body to to follow my excitement. So this program that I've developed, this workshop, is a two-part piece. One is I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about a research project that I did involving past life regression and soul writing. And you should have received in your packets, or those of you that are online download, um, uh, a handout. Looks like this. This is just helpful information for you later on, but also on the very last page, there is space for you to do the writing this at the end of this session. So, or you could write in your journals. You don't have to write on this, but I just wanted you to know that it's there for you. So I will share my screen with you and we'll get going. And at the end of the first part of the presentation, I'll stop for questions before we go into the soul writing. Okay, here we go. Magical Mystery Tour. Okay, can you all see that? Okay. Well, since I was a teenager, I've been fascinated by the whole concept of reincarnation. And the very first book that I read, and I know Diane was talking about how she's dated herself. I'm going to date myself even before her to let you know that the first book I read was The Search for Bridie Murphy. That came out, I think, in the late 50s or somewhere around there. I didn't read it till the 60s, but that just shows you how old I was. After that, I started reading everything I could on the subject of reincarnation. And then in 1987, when Shirley MacLaine's groundbreaking book Out on a Limb became a mini series, I began to pursue past life research with really great passion. It became almost all consuming for me. That was the year. If anybody has like a watershed year in their life, for me, 1987 was it, because Shirley MacLaine had this incredible mini series that came out in January of 1987 on ABC. I think it was 2 nights. And it was like the big wake up call for a lot of sleeping metaphysicians like myself. And after that, that was it. It was like the turning point. That year I joined the Edgar Cayce's ARE, Association for Research and Enlightenment, and I sort of never looked back. But being the overachiever that I am, and because I was so excited about the whole idea about reincarnation, having grown up Catholic, and this answered all my questions that Catholicism surely did not, I decided I would form my own past life research organization that I called Plexus. Plexus stood for Past Life Exploration, Understanding, and Sharing. At the time, I was living in Naperville, Illinois, outside of Chicago. And so I found a place where we could have monthly get-togethers. And I was simultaneously, the ARE was forming regions all through the country. And so I was part of the Heartland region, which was based in Chicago. It took in like 6 states. We had like 6,000 members. And so the ARE would bring in speakers who were experts in the field of reincarnation. So I would then ask them, well, while you're in Chicago, would you come and speak to my group for Plexus? And they said they would, and it was just wonderful. We had one great speaker after the other, and it started to grow, and to the point where I was doing professional journals with it. And my whole goal was to create an organization in which past life research and therapy was taken seriously, and that it was totally above board, and that only really, credible professionals were involved with the work that we were doing. So one of the guest speakers that I had, his name was David Roel. Now, David was a very talented channeler. And those of you who saw Out on a Limb or read the book know that Shirley MacLaine worked with Kevin Ryerson, another very talented channeler. But there were also a lot of, at that time in the late 80s, or a lot of people that were coming out that said they were doing channeling, and it was sort of iffy whether they really were or not. But David passed my test. I was like the Houdini of the past life world, and I was, trying to trip him up when I would ask him questions about my own past life journey, and he answered them every time. Now, David channeled an entity that he called Dr. Fredericks. Dr. Fredericks was an Akashic librarian, which meant that he could go to the Akashic records and he could pull your book and read it to you. So at one point, I knew I had a life in 1773. I asked him to pull the book, to pull that and read it to me, and he did. So that's how I knew that he knew his stuff. Well, anyway, what we would do when Dr. Fred would come is we would sit in a circle and we would ask him questions. And so there was one time when I was thinking, well, what in the world am I going to ask him? And then I thought, I'm really so passionate about past life work, but everything I read was the same old, same old. There was nothing new going on. So, so I had to ask him, so Dr. Fred, is there anything new in past life work? And he said, there is, you just haven't written about it yet. Now that was quite a challenge to be told that. I thought, what in the world is he talking about? And it took me quite a while because he wouldn't spoon feed the answer to me. I didn't know what he was saying. And I'm asking him, is there anything new? And he's saying, yeah, there is, but you haven't written about it yet. Okay, there's something coming up, something big coming up. And what that big coming up was actually my introduction to soul writing. Now, what is soul writing? I think most of you know who Edgar Cayce is, but if those of you who don't know who he is, he was like the most renowned and gifted psychic of the 20th century. He was based in Virginia Beach. He gave over 14,000 readings. 12,000 of those were health readings. That earned him the title of Father of Holistic Medicine. I consider Edgar Cayce my mentor, my teacher. I've studied the Cayce readings since 1987, and I have never found him to be wrong. Especially where the subject of reincarnation comes up. But Cayce used a term called inspirational writing. At the time, I didn't know what. I mean, I was doing some writing while in an altered state of consciousness, but I didn't know what it was called. I thought it was automatic writing, and I'm going to show you why it wasn't. But anyway, he called it inspirational writing. Later on, many years later, when I went to get my master's in transpersonal psychology through Atlantic University, this was my thesis. My thesis was on inspirational writing. I ended up calling it soul writing because when I was doing my research, all the books on inspirational writing, if you type inspirational writing into Amazon, you're going to get all Christian genre books. If you type in automatic writing, you're going to get all occult books. So I thought, well, neither one of those is the way Cayce intended it to be. So I thought, well, what is this writing? And I thought, well, it's a written form of meditation. So it's writing in an altered state of consciousness and getting that information from a much higher source, channeling that through you, through your soul, out your arm and down on the paper. The fabulous thing about soul writing is that you can get answers to any questions that you pose. It's like having a 24/7 hotline to the universe. And you can pose any question you want and you will always, always, always get an answer. If you want a visual, I like this visual because I sometimes think this is what it's like. You watch these telethons and there's these tables and tables of banks of phones, and the people there are just kind of sitting around, they're waiting, like, is somebody going to call? Sometimes I think our guides are doing that. It's like we have guides available to us all the time, and they're there to offer us help in any area of our lives, but we don't check in with them very often. So soul writing is a way to do just that. So I decided to form a research project around soul writing, and whether soul writing was something that I could attach to past life work. That was the something new. All of my books, by the way, are based on a research project. I don't really write anything that's just me pontificating about a particular subject that I'm interested in. I want to have other people tell their stories, and I want to have backup data to substantiate what it is that I'm writing about. So for this particular research project, which has been, look how long it's been, Lord, 10 years already. I had 50 volunteers. I never have a problem getting volunteers because I've got a network from ARE and from other organizations, metaphysical and otherwise. So I had 43 women and 7 men. That's pretty much the case, the division between men and women who participate in these types of projects. They ranged in age from 23 to 81. They went from Pompeii, 79 AD, to the Holocaust. So they were covering almost 2,000 years. 17 of those 50 never had a past life regression before. But 88% said that the session impacted their life in some way. And 76% said that it was the soul writing portion that explained, expanded, or clarified the information that they received in the regression. That's an important aspect of why this work is so important when attached to past life work, because it gives you the ability to go a little deeper and get questions answered. Sometimes it'll give you the backstory. Sometimes it'll tell you, you'll say to yourself, well, this is all well and good that I know all of this about my past life. What am I supposed to do with it now? Well, the soul writing can help you to identify how to apply it to your life now. Or if you have a question about it. Sometimes with the regressions, some people don't get very much information. I've had clients who cannot tell me anything about their biological families. They don't know where they came from. They don't know if they had any siblings. They don't know if they even had any friends in that life. And so sometimes we can go in there with the soul writing and we can dig a little deeper and get that information. Now, it's really important to differentiate between soul writing and its better known counterpart, which is automatic writing. A lot of people use the term automatic writing. I did for many, many years. The interesting thing about this is in 1990, I went to a ARE conference in Chicago. I think it was called Becoming Your Own Psychic or something like that, or How to Be a Psychic, I don't know. But Dr. Henry Reed, who is another one of my mentors, he'd been around ARE for a long time. He was talking about inspirational writing, and he gave out a pamphlet. That was the first time that I even knew that there was such a thing as inspirational writing versus automatic writing. But they also gave out a book, and it was a book that ARE was listing the top no-nos for developing your psychic abilities. And automatic writing was number 1, no. Number 2 was Ouija boards. And I was doing both. I mean, I would say, because I didn't know any better. This is what happens when you first start out with this. You just sort of, you're like a little sponge and you're just absorbing, but you're not taking the time to research what it is that you're getting yourself into. And I did get myself into some trouble. The reason automatic writing is a no-no for the ARE is because they're concerned about possession. And when you look down here at the list of the differences between the two, you can well understand why. With soul writing, when you're getting a message in soul writing, you get the collective we. So you're getting the collective consciousness coming through. We are with you always in love and in light. That's always the salutation that I get when I first do this writing. Automatic writing, it's often the ego-based I. You're dealing with one singular entity, and so and often that one is not for your highest and best. It's a low level frequency to it. The soul writing is coming from within. It's coming from within your soul. The automatic writing is coming from an outside source. All right, so that I is dictating to you. Soul writing always includes a meditation prior to doing the writing. You don't write without it. Automatic writing, you could just sit down and start writing. I mean, you don't really think about it. You don't do any sort of meditative process prior to picking up the pen. With soul writing, you have a total awareness of what you're writing. So it's like no surprise when it's coming out on the paper. With automatic writing, you often have no awareness at all. You have no clue what you're writing. And all of a sudden, when it's over and you go back and read it, you go, oh, what's that? Soul writing, you allow unconsciously watch the writing proceed. So you're aware of what you're writing. With automatic writing, it's often no control of your hand. It just happens by itself. I have noticed that if I slip into automatic writing, because there were times when I was first doing this, I would get really kind of cocky and I'd say, I don't need to do meditation. I don't need to surround myself with white light. I'm always there. No, I wasn't. And there were times when the writing got really bizarre. It got very tiny. It went up at an angle. I could feel a difference in my arm. It was very strange. Um, Soul writing, your handwriting remains basically the same as it does when you're in a conscious state. With automatic writing, it looks different. With soul writing, you always say a prayer of protection, surround yourself with white light. Actually, the two things that are most important with soul writing is the meditation and the prayer of protection. In my class that I teach on soul writing, I do go into great detail on how to set up a writing ritual, the ideal environment to do it in, and the step by step. But this is not what this workshop's about right now. So I'm just giving you an overview. And then finally, in soul writing, your soul is being guided. You're being gently nudged. But with automatic writing, you're often being directed or impelled to do something, like you will do this or something like that. So those are the basic differences between the two. Now, in my research project, it consisted of two parts. First was a traditional past life regression. I asked them to go to the lifetime that was most impacting them today, because you've had many, 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 many past lives, but you're not working on issues from all of them. You decided in your pre-life planning session that you were going to work on just a handful. Like Edgar Casey, when he would give a life reading for somebody, and he revealed past lives, he would never give them more than 4. And I think at one point, Shirley MacLaine even said that she got cut off because she became like a past life junkie, and all she wanted was more and more information about her past lives. Um, so the idea of then adding the past life, the soul writing aspect of it was something that I decided to do because I had inadvertently stumbled upon this. I had gotten, this is also going to show my age, Diane. Dick Sutphin was one of my early mentors. He has since passed. And he had a ton of subliminal hypnosis tapes. And there was one that I bought. It was called Start Writing Now. And I bought it because I was a writer by profession in my other life. I worked in advertising, public relations, and marketing. And so I did a lot of commercial copywriting. And although I was really good at it, it didn't give me any sort of satisfaction. I thought, what is this? I want to write something deeper. So I bought this tape and I listened to it. And to make a long story short, the subliminal message was, you have a story to tell, you can tell it, and like just see it as a movie. And so I saw myself dressed in a long white shift with a little cap on my head, holding a candle, coming down some stairs, sitting at a desk, pulling out some parchment paper and sitting and writing. And what I was ended up getting was diary entries from the 17 and 1800s. So it was my past life aspect who was sharing her diary entries with me. And I thought, this is really bizarre because the way they read like some sort of a sophomoric historic romance novel. And I thought, I don't write like that. What is this? But anyway, I ended up getting that went on for a couple of weeks. And then finally, my past life aspect wrote directly to me in one of those sessions and said, pretty much outlined what it was I was supposed to be doing going forward. So I knew you could contact your past life aspect that way, but I didn't know that you could do it the way Frank DeMarco did it. Now, Frank DeMarco, maybe some of you know him. He was the co-founder of Hampton Roads Publishing Company. He sold his interest in it, moved to Charlottesville, where I live, and he started doing his own writing. And we became friends. We met at the Monroe Institute, and he wrote a book called Chasing Smallwood. In it, he described how early one morning he found himself sitting at the kitchen counter. He was drinking coffee. It was like 4 a.m. or something, and he was writing in his journal. But he said he was moving between his normal consciousness and an altered state in which he was able to allow someone else form the words. That someone else turned out to be Joseph Smallwood, who was a 19th century American who was a Union officer during the Civil War. And as it turns out, it was a past life aspect of Frank's. So while reading Chasing Smallwood, I couldn't help but compare Frank's experience to my own and noticed one important difference. So during the years that I was communicating with my past life aspect, when I was getting all those diary entries, we did not engage in an ongoing conversation with each other. It was just, I'm going into this meditative state, putting the pen down, and then I'm getting this writing, and she's identifying it as April 12th, 1803. It was pretty much one-sided with me being on this. I was a silent witness to what she was writing about her life story. It never occurred to me to stop her by interjecting questions as Frank did with Joseph. And I have since added this as part of my, the very last part of my, no, that's the very last part. I teach a soul writing course now, a 3-day intensive. And one of the exercises is to do a past life regression. And then when you identify your past life aspect, to actually have a conversation. So you're talking to yourself, you're talking to your prior self, your past life aspect. So it's very fascinating, because there are things in there that, about the Civil War, about what life was like during that time, from the perspective of somebody who actually lived then. You can talk about revisionist history, right? If everybody remembered their past lives, there would be no revisionist history because we would remember things the way that they really were, not the way that historians have subsequently written about it. But for the sake of this project that I was working on, Frank agreed to be part of my research group, and he went back to a past life as Cleo, and this was the Pompeii life. In that life, he was a young male, thin, with an olive complexion. He was a tall, healthy teenager. He had coarse, dark hair. He wore leather sandals and a Roman robe made up of a rough gray material. He lived in the western part of southern Italy near Naples. He said there were no buildings in sight, but there was a cave nearby that he used for shelter or when he wanted to be alone or was on a vision quest. So Cleo was what they called a diviner in fire, meaning he was a prophet or soothsayer who gained insight into a question or a situation through a fiery ritual. He worked with a slightly older teacher to develop this ability. And his mentor taught him to use a burning image to keep his conscious mind busy as he went into an altered state of consciousness. While in that state, he could scan immediate time and space and get impressions about what was coming up. Those impressions were his finds, and his job was to share what he saw with the people of Pompeii. Well, when he was in his early 20s, Cleo prophesied that there would be a huge disaster at Pompeii. While he was recognized as a prodigy, he also was arrogant and much too young and inexperienced to know how to translate what he was seeing so that people could understand and accept his premonitions. He thought that by simply sharing his vision, the majority of Pompeii's 20,000 residents would believe him and immediately begin an orderly evacuation. But rather than listening to him and leaving, they stayed. They didn't take his warning seriously, and they thought, even if it were true, they had plenty of time to escape. So when Vesuvius erupted, the citizens of Pompeii realized the seriousness of the situation and they panicked. The resulting stampede was something that Cleo had not foreseen. Although he knew where to go to escape his own death, he was so overcome with guilt at having failed to convince the populace to leave that with death and destruction everywhere, his remorse was so unbearable that he no longer wanted to live. So rather than save himself, he went into the caves near the ocean and he stayed there with a crowd of people who suffocated with the clouds of toxic gases and ash as that quickly filled the cave. His last thoughts as his soul left his body, which is very important, by the way, in a regression session, because it often sets up the next lifetime. His last thoughts were that despite his training, his talent, and his position, he had failed his mission. He should have accepted responsibility for his gifts and used them in a less pompous way. If he had been humble, he would have come across as more sincere. Perhaps then he would have been believed and more lives would have been saved. Now, unbeknown to me, Frank suffered from asthma in this life. He did not make the connection between his death in Pompeii and the asthma in this life from simply the regression. He made it from the soul writing portion. When I asked him after the regression was over to ask his soul if there was any other information that he did not get in the regression that he needed to know, this is what he wrote. Asthma, the result of seared lungs. He said, breathing seems to have calmed down as we did the reenactment. No parents, orphan, no memory of them, seemingly no other life but serving. Too cocksure, plus too inexperienced. Regret, remorse, wasted training, cautious attitude, humility, caution, certainty, sureness in doing these things today. Afterwards, his symptoms completely disappeared. The asthma was gone. This happens a lot when you're working with physical karma. Many times the regression alone, uncovering the source of the symptom, the source of the discomfort or the chronic illness, will release it. When I did my other research on physical karma, about a little over 30% had a spontaneous healing. So it's very, 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 very powerful. Now, we went into this session to review the lifetime that was impacting Frank in the here and now. And his soul chose the one where he acquired a physical karma that was manifesting as asthma nearly 2,000 years later. You know, our bodies contain information that could be read like a karmic history book. So many physical conditions are often related to an event that occurred in a prior lifetime. So karmic manifestations are a true example of cause and effect of reaping what you sow. Spontaneous healings often occur simply when the root cause of the problem is uncovered. In his book, Through Time into Healing, Dr. Brian Weiss wrote, like migraine headaches, asthma, respiratory infections, and allergies are physical conditions in the current lifetime that seem to have origins in suffering experienced in previous lifetimes. Past physical trauma seems to have present physical residue. So why now? Why did it take 2,000 years? Well, Frank's working on this particular lifetime because guess what? He's doing the same work now that he did as Cleo. In other words, he is channeling spiritual information. He is putting it out in books. He is getting in front of audiences. And Spirit was saying to him, do not do what you did last time. Don't let that ego get in the way, because it's very important that this message get out there and that people believe you. So put your arrogance and your ego aside, learn from what happened to Cleo, and you'll be fine. And that's exactly what has happened. So let's look at some other examples. I did a regression with Steve. He was a 69-year-old retiree. He went back to a lifetime in which he was in Rome, 301 AD. He said his name sounded like Leanne. I don't know that it was Leanne, but for the sake of this, that's phonetically the way it was coming out. She was a young woman in her 20s from a well-to-do Roman family. The significant event occurred when she was sitting in a VIP section at the Colosseum. She wanted to save a gladiator that she admired, but she got voted down. She talked a lot about the people around her. She was afraid they were going to kill her. This was the theme throughout the regression, that she was going to be killed because she was so outspoken and so rebellious and so discontent. She said, I don't like the way Rome is being run or anything about it. It's like a court with wealthy, powerful people all sucking up to the emperor. And she thinks she was going to be poisoned, or she was poisoned, or there was a conspiracy to kill her. But in the end, she ended up killing herself. Her final words from that lifetime was, I hate them. I hate what they stand for. I hate everything about them. They're all sociopaths. They care about no one but themselves. Now, in this life, Steve worked at a university, and he quit his job, retired early, because of the group of people that he was working with. So he starts describing the people he's working with in this life almost the exact same way he's describing the people in Rome. The people there, meaning the people at his job, were thoughtless, like the people in Rome. They did what they did without contemplating it. Not very real. One-dimensional people. They just don't care. They're almost some kind of benign sociopaths. Use that word twice. They just never gave up any thought to what they were doing. They just went through the motions. You couldn't talk to them. It was like talking to a wall. It had the same energy as the people in Rome, but not nearly as dark. Still, they were mindless with no real sense of regular people. Now, Steve's previous life and the information he acquired during the regression and the soul writing session gave examples of several karmic influences at work in this life. The first thing had to do with final thoughts at the end of one's life. That became the unfinished business, the summation of the woes or the pleasantries of the life just completed. So remember, Leanne was born into a group of souls, into that particular group of souls, whether she liked them or not, they were very much her peers. Yet within that soul group, she felt isolated and alone in her opinions. She admitted feeling discontented, and that led to a rebellious streak that her companions could not tolerate. So it was in this lifetime that Steve found himself in a group who exhibited nearly the same characteristics as its Roman counterpart. So predictably, Steve's criticism of them was the same as Leanne's was of her peers, going so far as to repeat the accusation that his current group was filled with sociopaths, just like the Roman group, admitting that they both had the same energy. So it's no wonder that this energy repeated itself in a group dynamic, because as we travel from one lifetime to the other, our souls tend to repeat patterns of behavior. We recreate the same setup we experienced before so that we could tackle a lesson we didn't complete in the previous lifetime. With this pattern in place, it's easy to understand why soul groups are attracted to each other to complete the unfinished business between them. So this group of people that were in Steve's life at the university that he was working with is the same group of people that were in his Roman lifetime. So they might be in different bodies or circumstances are different, but the dynamic between them is identical. The issues between them were never resolved because what Leanne committed suicide. She never finished that, resolved that karma from that life. And in this life, he resigned his job prematurely and he didn't get to finish up with this group. So he's probably going to meet up with these folks again. I want to talk to you a little bit about soul groups since I've alluded to that already. I didn't expect this to happen, by the way. Could people mute their mics because I'm getting feedback conversation. So during the regression sessions, I began to see what I call pods coming together. That's a group of souls who, despite being strangers in this life, were reliving similar events in similar time periods. So during the course of this project, I did not have just one, I had 3 soul groups appear. These individuals told stories that were eerily similar to that of other participants in the study, despite the fact that they never met in this lifetime. This phenomenon isn't anything new, certainly, as there have been many studies of group incarnations before. So I want to show you the 3 examples and how they, now remember, these people don't know each other at all. They all came to me to be part of this study. The first was Marion, who lived in 1203 in either England or Germany. She was a young Caucasian female. She described her life as precarious, at risk from men who roam the woods. She has twins, a boy and a girl. Only the girl, Anne, survives. And her comment was, it's better to be a boy in those days. She was hiding in a cave with her daughter, who at that point was 10 or 11 years old. She said, we're hiding from men with bad intentions. The pattern repeats until they're found and the girl is dragged away. Okay, that's number 1. The second one is Michelle, who lived in France in 1208 AD, 5 years later. Michelle is a past life aspect of Chris, who was a truck driver, came to the study. She was a young Caucasian female. She described life as happy and content. She talked about armored clad soldiers appearing. She feeds them, but they become drunk and they assault her. She defends herself. She killed one soldier and then she was killed. The third one, he couldn't come up with a name. This is a past life aspect of Boyan. He didn't know what his name was, but said it began with the letter D. So that's all I have. Again, D in Europe in 1280 AD. Young Caucasian female again. A group of soldiers came in and took a little girl around 7 years of age. He thinks he was the little girl who was taken. Now, what do they share in common? All 3 were young Caucasian females. All 3 lived in the 13th century from 1203 to 1280. All 3 lived in Europe. All 3 described fear of invading soldiers, and all 3 experienced a traumatic event at the hands of those soldiers. Now, I did a little bit of a comparison about how the past life was foreshadowing the current life. So now Jenny had the past life as Marion. Marion and her daughter Anne reincarnated as Jenny and her present daughter. Anne is dragged away from Marion and Marion never sees her again. Jenny's daughter in this life is dragged away by the police and sentenced to life in prison. I asked Jenny to do some soul writing about that life, and this is what she wrote. Forgiveness is what is needed in this life. I feel anger towards men who harm others in any way. I've seen the illusions and lies of systems in our country and world in this lifetime. I must forgive and let God handle it. I sense the same anger from my daughter. We both feel fear and anger from that life and have a lot to work out together, and we are. I put this in God's hands. I now understand why my daughter and I experienced this. I was not able to save this life either, but I know where she is and comfort her. I've had to work out my guilt for not rescuing her this time also. Looking at Michelle's life and how it has foreshadowed Chris's, Chris said that he has recreated architectural details in his home that were in Michelle's kitchen. And he didn't know this till he did the regression. Then he saw what Michelle's kitchen looked like. He has a strong reaction to individuals who have similar personalities as soldiers. He said, I can't stand people who act like soldiers, out of control, arrogant, dominating, no consideration, and braggers. And this was Chris's soul writing. The contentment was stopped by bad behavior. So unnecessary. Here we go again. How many times? When will the meetings be more direct? How to transcend the repetitive lives? Knowing isn't always the answer. It's all we can do. And then there's D, how D's life foreshadowed Boyan's. He experienced what it felt like to be a female who has no physical power. He experienced tremendous loneliness and said, I thought the fact I was female, and he did. He really did not. And I find that a lot with my male clients. If they go to a past life, which they're a woman, they have a hard time processing it. Whereas the women don't have any problem at all being men, because it's, we can feel what it's like to be in a very powerful, strong body. Anyway, he said, I fought the fact that I was female discovering femininity. I wanted to be born as a man in this life to experience being male. The notion of being lonely, I was afraid when I was younger in this life to stay alone. And then this was Boyan's soul writing. He said, it was scary to admit I was a woman, strong enough to survive, but lonely, nobody to love. Where are others in that scenario? Where is love? When I re-experienced myself as female, I can tell I feel different understanding for women. Boy, was I brutal in my superiority of man. But being man or woman, it feels the same, no difference. We are all the same from inside. Now I know everyone wonders about famous past lives. I've had my share of them, meeting people. Over the years, I've met a handful of individuals who had or thought they had a famous past life. Talking with a friend once, and we were discussing the odds of an individual having a historically recognizable past life, and she made a simple, yet very profound statement. Well, somebody had to be him or her. And that's certainly true. Nonetheless, you may ask, why then are there multitudes of Marie Antoinettes, Thomas Jeffersons, and Martha Jeffersons, and Napoleons and Cleopatras? When so many come forward to stake a claim to a famous past life, it becomes more of a metaphysical sideshow than legitimate past life recall. I once had a client who came to me saying she was sure she was Patrick Henry, and she based that on the fact that she, like Henry, was a talented orator. So she said, I like to talk, and so does he. Another woman claimed to have been Martha Jefferson because she had this strange sensation whenever she went to Williamsburg. And based on that evidence alone, these intelligent, well-meaning women decided they must have been that famous personality. The important thing to remember is that this lifetime is about this lifetime. When this life ends, you review what you accomplished in the here and now, not what you did in the there and then. That's already been reviewed. In this life, you already may be working out karma acquired from that previous life. How you handle situations that come up in this life is of primary importance. If you prefer to bask in the glory or hide in the shame of your past life, you do your present life and your soul a great disservice. In personally knowing the individuals who were famous, I can tell you from firsthand experience that they say this knowledge has not been an easy thing to bear in this life. This is especially true if they felt they were not living up to the potential their previous lives had earned, or if they couldn't live down some of the rather unsavory things that they did before. People mistakenly assume that when reviewing a past life, they will see a steady upward climb. In the Casey readings, he points out that souls make advances, but they often lose ground as well. The last book that I wrote Edgar Casey and the Unfulfilled Destiny of Thomas Jefferson Reborn is a good example of that. Casey did a reading on a 2-day-old baby in 1936 and said he was the reincarnation of Thomas Jefferson and Alexander the Great. And Casey also said that his soul was able to do for the world what Jefferson did for this country. Well, obviously that didn't happen. And I wanted to explore why. Why didn't that happen? And so that's what that whole book is about. If you're interested in that, I encourage you to read it. Gives you a little bit more insight into somebody who had a famous past life, and what they did or did not do with it. Now, I had a volunteer. Her name was Barbara. She came to the study. She was very, very reluctant to give me any information. I pretty much had to pull it out of her. But she ended up telling me that she went to a past life in England in the 1500s. She was a middle-aged male. She did not give me her name. She did say it was in the British Isles. And then she said, feels like old times, strong church, old kingdom, medieval times, strong, big ego king. Well, I immediately, as a historian, thought she must be talking about Henry VIII. She wasn't Henry VIII. She was a counselor in his court. She referenced repeated arguments. She said at first she was in favor of the religious persecution that Henry had initiated, then she was against it. She failed to convince the king to kind of knock it off, and as a result was executed. Her last thoughts were, how could this happen? Better keep quiet. I felt punished for speaking my truth. So this is Barbara's soul writing. And so we learn, is that not the point? You then, loving power, inconvenienced by truth, silent about truth, punishing others, withholding sustenance, controlling lives, deciding death, dying is lived and did under control of others. Also see there is truth. Rises unhidden inside, do not speak and betray oneself, and God speak and be punished. What is power? To have from others leads to loss integrity. To have from inside feels good, nourishes heart, reveals soul. Hold in or let out, does it matter? Yes. Hold back, why live? One's truth is oneself. Oneself as self or as expression of God. Don't forget that fire also creates light, and with light one is seen. One can be heard, never matter, only to speak, all are said enough. Now you might say to yourself, this is really kind of a bizarre message, but it meant something to her. Obviously she was having a hard time in this life to speak her truth. And because she was subconsciously remembering, the last time I did that, my head got chopped off. I'm not going to do that again. And this was encouraging her to go forward. Soulmates, one of my very favorite topics. Although sometimes I think our soulmates are actually our cellmates. Anyway, I want to tell you about one of these and how the soul writing helped with her. This is Vivian. She was a male in South Dakota, 1847. She identified her name as Albert Wilcox. She was a cowboy, worked cattle at 31, marries Rebecca Yancey. They have a son who dies as a child. She's got a very close, or he does, Native American friend. Then Albert is killed by a mountain lion at age 42. His last thoughts were of Rebecca. His unfinished business was a life with Rebecca. How Albert's life foreshadowed Vivian's, while Rebecca reincarnates as Vivian's husband, Dennis. Switched genders, which happens all the time. Her love for Dennis is the same as Albert's love was to Rebecca. The same strong sense of protectiveness and loyalty to family and friends. His death and the death of a child teaches her that she can't control everything about her life. And this is her soul writing. My understanding of love came from my connection to the Indians. They taught me much about life, honor, love, and being a warrior. I was a very tough, rough man who cared about no one but myself until I met Rebecca. She taught me lessons in love, and my Indian friend Manatee taught me lessons in life. Charles, that was their son, was a lesson for me to learn about not having control of all things, that he could be taken from us and I couldn't replace him. Rebecca was about giving and change. She gave up all she knew to be with me, but she did it willingly. My death showed me that I could not control everything about my life, that I needed to be more in communion with than trying to control. All I love is still with me, but I have to understand where they are and not be in control. So that's the karmic lesson for this life, about letting go and not being in control. We were talking earlier about the Holocaust. I did have, I don't get very many actual Holocaust past lives. I get a lot of them who think they were in the Holocaust and turns out that they weren't, but this one definitely did. This was my final session. It was with Fran, who was a coordinator of guidance and counseling services for the public school system. Fran's past life was as Miriam, known as May May, in the 1930s in Europe. So she was 5 years old. She's remembering this. She lived in what she called an old world European city. She was the youngest of nearly a dozen siblings. And she said her brother took her out to the country to hide her. She was taught about the bad versus the good Germans. She relied on daydreams to occupy her time. That she had a premonition of being found, and she is found. And then she described having out of body experiences to avoid the pain of experimentation. Miriam's life foreshadowed Fran's, and that they're both Caucasian females. Fran has a real need to know about the Holocaust. That's one of those memory triggers that you get in your pre-life planning session, where ideas, sensations, things that you resonate to are sort of implanted, and they'll come up in your next lifetime as a reminder of the prior lifetime. So she's always had this need to know about the Holocaust. She's sensitive to people, especially children who are mistreated. She resonates to the German culture and the Jewish people. She doesn't know what happened to her family. Miriam didn't know what happened to her family, but Fran also feels disconnected from her family in this life. Now, I always do soul writing with my client. So in other words, I'm asking my friends upstairs if they have a message I can share. This is called the companion mode of healing. It's based on shamanic journeying. I do teach this again in my soul writing classes. So for me, I asked, do you have a message I could give to Fran? And this is what I got. Souls who suffer a trauma, who prematurely leave the physical, always come back immediately. This is interesting because this came up in Diane's talk as well. If you commit suicide or you die prematurely, if you're killed in a war or you're murdered or something happened, you tend to come back almost immediately, because it's like dropping out of school. You had lessons you needed to learn, you didn't get to finish them, and so you tend to come back right away. So this was stated in the soul writing. When her family brought her to the country to hide, and did so because she was special, her specialness was about her psychic abilities. This is why the Germans were after her. This is also, this is information that wasn't given to her in the regression. This is also why she was not frightened to be alone in the attic. She would conjure up imaginary play pals and see and talk to spirits. When they came for her, she had the ability to release her spirit from her body, and in that way became an observer of what was happening around her, and yet not feeling it. She was a bafflement. Her existence spawned interest on both sides of using psychic abilities to further one's agenda, something that continues to this day. For Fran, this is revealed to show how she still has those abilities. She only need recognize and tap into them again. She earned them in the past, and now they are forever a part of her soul's resources. So Fran said she had a preconceived notion about seeing this lifetime, so she was not surprised when it emerged. She said, I drove about 2 hours to get to this session, and so had time to think about what this would be. I did not intend necessarily for this past life to emerge. I was open to whatever came, but I believe this past life still has major implications for this present life, and all of which has not yet been revealed. So Fran was able to make the connection between Miriam's life and her own. She said, I've always known I was impacted by this even before I realized what it was. I have read hundreds of books about the Holocaust even before I knew why. I know I am extremely upset about the mistreatment of young children. It is why I chose to be a secondary counselor rather than an elementary one. I've always felt I was misplaced in the family and setting in which I was raised. In the days following the session, she said the insight she gained was, quote, that I do not give over enough time to explore my learning towards psychic knowledge, my 40-year interest in Edgar Cayce's messages. So what can we conclude by all of this? I'm sharing with you a reading from Edgar Cayce. Those of you that are not familiar with the Cayce readings, the number at the end, 3003-1, everybody who had a reading from Cayce was given a number to preserve their anonymity. So you never knew their names. So 3003 is an individual, -1 means it's the very first reading that Cayce did. And Cayce said there is as much reason to dwell upon the thought from whence the soul came, as it is upon whence the soul goeth. To me, that says this is the value of past life exploration. So what did we learn in the study? Whether you believe in reincarnation or not, it's really not the point. What is the point is to learn how to write from a place of divine inspiration that can unlock the doors you thought previously were tightly sealed with a padlock. Soul writing is the key to open those doors. But the biggest lesson of all is that we're all one, that we're never alone. Everyone in my project said that. That's what they felt. And that we always have guidance available to us. That's that 24/7 hotline that we have. So now it's going to be time for us to phone home. We're going to do some soul writing. Let me give you the basics for how to do soul writing. I want you to formulate a request for information about if you know your past lives, and I think most of you who are here do. If you don't, that's okay. You can just ask for, ask a question like, what's the most important thing I need to know about working on my karmic issues from my most relevant past life? Something like that. If you want to ask about a relationship issue with somebody, you can ask about that. If you want to ask about your career, fine. If you want to ask about finances, fine. Anything, if you have a chronic illness, ask about that. Where did this come from? You can ask questions like, why do I overeat? Why do I undereat? Why don't I have any self-confidence? Where does this talent come from? Just anything and everything, whatever is on your mind, you can ask. But because this workshop is about obtaining information with soul writing about a past life, I would really love for you to sort of zero in on a past life, like I said, if you know about it. We're going to do meditation. I will say a prayer and surround us with white light. I'll give you instructions at some point that you can open your eyes halfway. Now, the reason I say open your eyes halfway and not all the way is because if you open your eyes all the way, you may break the connection with spirit. So I want you to stay in that sort of sleepy, altered state of consciousness, like in a meditation, dreamlike state. Keep your hand and your wrist loose. Don't put any stress on your pen. Those of you who are doing it by hand, that's the optimal way of doing it. But if you want to do it on a keyboard, you can. I would just say to you, watch, because if your eyes are halfway closed and you shift over just a little bit, you're going to get nonsense when you go to read it. So that's why I always do mine by hand, and then I transfer it to the computer keyboard. You can start the writing process by making ovals. That kind of jump starts it, because out of the oval will come an L or an E or an M or an N, and then wait for the letters and the words and the phrases, or you might even get a whole sentence. You might not get anything in writing, but you're getting a message in your head, go ahead, write that down, and then go back to the ovals. Do not worry about punctuation or grammar. This is stream of consciousness writing. When the pen is down on the paper, the old typewriters, the old manual typewriters where you're typing away and the carriage goes all the way to the right and then you got to flip it back. That's what this is like. It's like you're writing, going to the end of the paper and then flipping back and then going to the next line and flipping back. So, no, there may not be any periods. There may not be any space between sentences. You may not cross your T's or dot your I's. That's okay. I know this drives my English teacher friends crazy, but just let it go. Just let it go. Let the writing just come as it may, and you will be just fine. You'll be aware of what you're writing. Just, don't worry about it. Just let it, and don't try to stop it or force it to say something other than what you're getting, because then what's the purpose of it, right? You'll instinctively know when to stop, because either the pen will just stop or there won't be any more messages or whatever. But it's an incredible process that just, it's like a Oreo cookie, all right? So the beginning of it is going to be, hi, we're so glad you're here. Kind of, it's been a long time since we've chatted. The middle part of it is the meat. That's where you're going to get your really profound statements. And remember, the more profound the question, the more profound the answer. So make sure you give that some thought. And the end is the goodbye. It's been nice chatting with you. Come back and see me again soon. So I want you to think of this as being with an old friend that you hadn't seen in a long, long time. And they're waiting for you. They know you're going to do it, right? Because they've been hanging out and they know what we're doing. So, and then always thank Source. Always say, hey, thanks a lot. This was really appreciated. So before we do that, I wanted to mention some of the other books that I have written. I'll put this back up and with my other information, but I thought I'd stop now. Does anybody have any questions before we do the writing? No?
Can we take a short break first? That's fine if we can't. Never mind.
I'm just afraid you won't all get back in time.
Yeah.
Okay. We can do, well, we may end up ending early anyway. Depends on how much information you get and whether you want to share that or not. All right. Are you all ready? Okay, I'm going to give you probably 10 to 15 minutes to do the writing. But like I said, if you feel the message is complete, just stop and kind of hang out until the rest of us come back. So what I'd like you to do now is to put your journal or your pad of paper or that sheet that I had given you on the table or on your lap. I can't see you, so I don't know what's happening, but all right, are you all ready? Okay. What I'd like you to do is just close your eyes and begin to breathe deeply. And exhale ever so slowly, ever so comfortably. That's right, just breathe deeply and relax. Breathing deeply and letting go. settling into a sense of great peacefulness. Just let go and relax. And as you're breathing deeply and letting go, I want you to visualize that I'm placing a powerful, translucent, golden shield of light all around you from head to toe, as if you were floating in a bubble of light. This divine light is protecting you from all outside negative forces, keeping you safe as we work with spirit. To strengthen this shield, I'm going to say a prayer of protection on behalf of all of us. Mother, Father, God, we ask that the divine light that emanates from the essence of your being descend upon us, surrounding us with an iridescent aura, protecting us from all things seen and unseen that are in opposition to our greater good. We ask it, and so it is. All right, so now you are completely protected. I'd like you to just continue breathing deeply and relaxing completely. And as you do, just feel the quietness of spirit enveloping you, taking you to a safe and loving place deep within. Slow down your thoughts. If something comes into your mind and distracts you, just brush it aside and return your attention to your breath as you continue to breathe deeply and relax completely. So relaxed and so at ease. Every part of you is relaxing now, starting with the toes of your feet, moving into the ball and into your arches, into your heels, and right on up to your ankles, into your legs and your knees, relaxing all the muscles as it goes into your thighs, into your hips. Just feel the fingers of both of your hands relaxing as it goes into your forearms and your upper arms. And that wonderful feeling of total relaxation moves into the base of your spine, slowly moving up, up your spine and into the back of your neck and shoulder muscles that are now loose and limp. Just completely relax. Feel your scalp relaxing. Your facial muscles are relaxed. Your eyes are tired and heavy. Your jaw and your throat are completely relaxed. Your entire body is now relaxed all over in every way. And all tension is gone in your body and mind. And now you're very open and receptive. Your mind is awake and alert on all levels while your body is gently relaxing. Quietness of spirit fills your body and mind. And we're going to work together to open a channel for successful soul writing. You have the ability to step outside yourself and allow the energy of your higher mind, your angel, spirit guide, or source to communicate with you through your hand through soul writing. For this session, think about a question you'd like to ask about your life. If you know about a past life, you can ask about that. Or you can ask about a chronic condition you're dealing with, or relationship issue, your career, your family, or your finances. And if you don't have a question or prefer to look at some other aspect of your life, that's fine. Just stay open and receptive and see what spirit has to say. All right, in just a moment, you're going to begin writing. Remember, you have the ability to allow the energy to flow through you and receive inner guidance through soul writing. When you begin the writing, you'll hold your eyes just barely open as you stare blankly at the paper on your lap or at the screen on your computer. If you're doing it by hand, just keep the pen moving at all times. And if your message concludes before I bring you back, just continue to rest with your eyes closed. So on the count of 3, you will begin to write. Number 1, number 2, number 3, begin writing.
So we're about ready to wrap the soul writing up. If you are in the groove, just keep writing, and then Joanne will walk you through the next part of the process, and we'll do some sharing if you like. So go ahead, Joanne.
All right. If you finished writing, time to return to full consciousness. Just close your eyes for now for a few moments. Complete the session by thanking the source of your information. And then just take your time, and when you're ready, slowly open your eyes, coming back ever so gently. Just open your eyes, recall the situation in the room, and be wide awake, feeling alert and at peace. Welcome back. We've got plenty of time. So if you didn't finish the writing, you could just continue to do the writing. Otherwise, I'd like to open it up for questions or sharing. Okay, everybody's muted right now. Okay.
Yeah. Teresa is going to share her experience.
So this goes back to the class that we, the second class that you had. The one regression where I blacked out but woke up in it. And afterwards, after we had to write about it, and it was kind of, it all makes sense now. Like, so, but so I kind of did soul writing then. Like my hand was warm, and then just started writing. So I could share what I wrote then. It said, we have to write, you have to let us write. That is what we do. Quit being scared, stop resisting. Why do you resist? So it is time. It has been time. We have to do this. You will heal. They will heal. We can heal so many. The time is now. Don't be scared. Rise up. Let's do this. Sit, be still, and write. Just let us write through you. We will write so through. So that happened in class, which I didn't know. I've done automatic writing when I channel. So I thought this was just, I didn't know about the we, why the we, you know. And then, so I thought that was really interesting. Also, I bought, I was at the ARE back in like 2015, and I bought your book, Soul Writing, then, but I never read it. I also bought a couple of psychic books and read through them. And so I've had the Soul book on my bookshelf for years, and about 3 months, I took it out and it's been on my nightstand. I still haven't read it, but I will when I get home. So it's all, it's just like, all how it led me here.
Divine timing.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then I haven't read what I just wrote, but I think it's the same. We're still here always. You know what you have to do, so please do it. We are here to guide you, push you. You will be happy. That is what you see. You will help people. That is what you see. Let go of ego, let go, be free. Stop fighting. It does no good. You're almost there. Let go. We have been waiting. It is time. You need to write. You need to write every day. This is no coincidence. We are here. We are always here. We have always been here. You don't have to be perfect. No one will destroy your writings. They need to be shared. We need to be heard. It is time. Something in time. The time is now. Do it. We need to get the message out. It's time. This is the time. This is the moment. Don't be scared. Let go, release, breathe, relax. Yes, go to the beach and write, meditate. We are ready. That is why we are here. Don't be scared. We love you. we have your back, we are something, time, let us write, don't resist, this is good.
Wow, that's a lot.
That is a lot. Yeah.
Could you hear all of that, Joanne?
Yeah, I heard it. Yeah. Yeah. How did it make you feel? How did it resonate with you on a?
Oh, yeah, like my arm's warm, my arm goes warm when I do that, is that normal, is that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The feeling of that
Okay.
energy going through it. Yeah.
Okay, because I do automatic writing. Like when I talk to my spirit guides, then each one of them writes differently, but this was totally different. I've never done it.
How did that compare to you?
Like, I feel really good about this. I think the automatic writing was because I'm a medium and I've just started like, I've already like working on that. And I think the automatic writing was a tool for me to work on that. I'm kind of past that. I don't even do the automatic writing anymore.
Yeah.
But the soul writing is, I feel like, well, obviously I have to do it. So
Sounds like you can really feel the difference in the two.
I could feel the difference. Huge, like, just, yeah, the, like, automatic writing, it's just different. It's like, I want to say scribbling, but I can, I could see and I hear maybe, but
Yeah.
this is just totally different. And I don't know, there's so many other things that led me to hear, like, a lot of them. I know the second class, you had said set your intention before we went back, and then, so I don't know what happened when I I guess I was downloading or something, because I woke up in the regression. But then instead of writing that, it went into the automatic write on something else. And then about the beach, my friend said, invited me to the beach. I thought we were going to have her sign it up saying I'm gonna go, but like 18 years ago, I went to Ocracoke the first time, and I just knew I was gonna write a book. I was gonna start my book there. Like, I just knew something. And anyway, I'm not going to Hatters, but I'm going to Ocracoke Monday. So it's just like all how it lined up, and I didn't even plan that.
Yeah.
And then your book, like, I bought your book at the already.
Well, that's not unusual. I do the same thing. You something in you says this is important for you, but maybe it's not the right time, but it happens to be in front of you right at that moment. So you think, okay, I'll get it and I'll get to it. I mean, you see all the books behind me?
Yeah.
I've read them. No. So, some of them I love the ones that have indexes, because I could go in there, and if I'm doing some research, I could look something up and then, use that in a book. So thank you for sharing all of that. I especially appreciate that you validated that there is a difference between the soul writing and the automatic writing. Yeah. That's sort of been my mission, is to educate people about the difference. Because there is a book called Venturing Inward that Hewlin Casey wrote. Hewlin was Edgar Casey's son. There's a whole chapter in there on automatic writing and about the people that ended up coming to the ARE because of they felt they were possessed. They had experienced, a sense of possession, and some of them are pretty scary to read what they went through. So that's why they put it as their number one no-no in doing this work. But it's very easy to if you don't know the difference, it's very easy to stumble into something like that. Like even with the Ouija board, they've got that as number 2. And I was doing the Ouija board back in the 80s, which is how the writing came out, because friends of mine were doing the Ouija board, and I thought, well, I'll keep notes of what the letters that they're getting. And all of a sudden my hands started moving, and and then that was automatic writing, because I got into trouble at that. This little entity that came through, he said his name was John Mellington. And he said he had been my son in a previous life and that I had abused him. And there was my son at that time was under 5 years old, and he came into the kitchen one time. He said, "Mom, there's a little boy in the dining room. He's in the corner of the dining room. He's holding his hat. He's crying, and he's holding he's got his hand on his face. That was John appearing to my son. And then another time, my son wanted Halloween candy. I used to keep it in a big Tupperware thing on top of the refrigerator so the kids couldn't get to it. And I had said, no, you can have candy after dinner. And the next thing I know, the whole thing of Tupperware candy came tumbling down. That was John again. And so I had an actual poltergeist experience going on in my home because I opened myself up. So I had to get a psychic to come in and do some cleansing and stuff. That's why I'm because I went through it myself. I think that's why I'm so concerned about and the Ouija board. You know, my thing with the Ouija board was, oh, Parker Brothers makes it. You can buy it at Toys R Us. You know, how dangerous can this be? Surprise. So anyway, that's my story.
Let's see if
Anybody else want
anyone
to share
online
anything,
has
especially
something.
if you've yeah, that'd be great. Or anything from if anything from past life came up.
Let me see if I can open the chat.
Or maybe any questions about the
So if anyone online has a share or a question, please raise your hand, open your mic, and we'll take that. And then while we're waiting for someone there, does anyone else here would like to share? And you were writing away like crazy, so I know you have
somebody
some
online,
time.
Carol.
Okay, who is that? Oh, Layla, hi.
Yes, hi everyone.
Hi, Lynn.
Joanne, thank you so much for this amazing experience. It was my first time doing soul writing.
Wait a minute.
And I was going on and going on for many, many pages. Actually, I've written 3 pages.
Wonderful.
But one thing I wanted to share with you, and one thing that makes me very vulnerable, I'm actually shaking right now a little bit. I was not expecting that to come out. It said, forgive your great mother. Forgive your great mother. Grandmother. So my mother's grandma.
Wow.
So I will have to meditate on that and look further into why this message came up.
You have no idea why it did? Do you know?
I have, I'm sensing there is this physical issue on my lineage, on my mother's side. A lot of them got dementia very early. And as far as I know, it started with my great, like I started with her. That's how far I can know the journey. I don't know any further than her. And my question was something else, but this came to me as a message, send her forgiveness.
Oh,
So that's the only thing I wanted to share. But thank you so much, Joanne, for this amazing experience.
oh, you're welcome. I hope you will pursue that in any way that's, you know, comfortable for you. It doesn't have to be through the writing, although you could do that. You know, you can even initiate a conversation with her.
That's what I'm going to do on Tuesday or Wednesday when the All Souls Day is coming. So I'm going to be working with my lineage and my ancestors.
Good.
So I'm very grateful for this message just in time for that.
Yes, that's wonderful. I'm so glad for you. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Layla.
Thank you.
I think someone else wanted to also share online. Let's see, Wendy. Did you say Wendy? Okay. And who else wanted to share here?
I'll share.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me turn the thing around. Oh,
So my question or my connection was asking to connect with, or to know more about the past life that I have had. With my
I don't
middle
see Carol. I
son.
don't see her. Okay. All right. Hi.
I was asking to have more of more information or more of a connection with relationship of a past life that I have with my middle son, who's 12 years old. backstory, I connect with him through past lives before. And interesting, another connection, I don't know what her name is right there, but when she was talking about her pregnancy loss, I had 2 pregnancy losses. And then I had my son Niall. And I was told later by spirit that he pushed those souls through. That he chose to be born to me, but that he wasn't ready when I was pregnant with those other 2 pregnancies. And so, as weird as it sounds, he pushed those souls out of me so that he could be born when he was ready to be born. I know it's a little dark, and I can't really read what I wrote because it was just scribbling. But essentially, I'm in a dark room with him, and there's a shadow and light coming through in a room, and he is in power, and I have betrayed him, and he is there to punish me and put me to death. There's an arrow is how I'm going to be put to death, and that I have broken some sort of in just now in this writing. He is my son, I am his mother, but I have broken some sort of cultural law, and there's a whole theme of cold and warm. So the room is very cold. There's a cold and warm temperature, but he's cold to me by putting me to death. But internally, he doesn't want to do it. He has warmth. He loves me, but culturally, he as in being in power, he has to do what his duty is and put me to death. And then it moves into another past life where it's essentially the exact same scenario, but it is Native American, and he's a chief, and he again has to reprimand me, or and it's more themes of temperature. There's cold, snow, blood, and then I was shown an image of me like laying in a river, and again the theme of cold and warm and cold and warm. And so now his name is Nile. He's named after the Nile River, and he has bright fiery red hair, and he's Leo sun, Leo moon. So the themes of the temperatures make sense coming through. And I've done a lot of work with connecting with him, and we have a very, very strong karmic connection. But I've never that has never come through in our connection of his duty of having to basically kill me twice.
Wow. Can't make this stuff up,
No.
can you?
What's your relationship like in this life?
It's great. I'm very open about my experiences and my beliefs. I work in my house. I do aura readings for people and have clients. So I'm very open with my children about what I do and my beliefs and what I experience. And he is like the biggest skeptic. The biggest skeptic. And I always tell him one of my goals in this life is to impress him, because he's not impressed by anything that I do. But I have had other psychics and energy readers that are just been around him, and couple times I've actually, and when he was little, I've had a tarot reader actually put their hand over his head and say that he's like, they can feel his energy. And so my impression is that as a young kid, he maybe experiences all these things internally, and it's almost like he can't, it's so intense for him. Instead of accepting it and vocalizing the things he's experiences, he's the skeptic and completely like shuts it down and pushes away, which is exactly what I did as a child. Exactly.
Interesting.
And just begin the loop again with us.
Yeah.
And I are just in this big loop.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of
You're
that. That's
welcome.
fascinating. I relate to that. My children are not into this at all.
Yeah.
Whenever I would do something like this or go to an ALE program, my children would say, "Oh, mom's going to be with her people." It was like two separate worlds that I live in. So I can relate. But there's meaning in everything, right? There's a reason for everything. Anybody else want to share anything, any aspect of?
Olga, did you want to share?
No.
No.
I actually have a question.
Okay, questions are good.
I did have
Olga
something.
always has questions, by the way.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did have something, but kind of like. Anyway, for people that have hard time soul writing, like what would you recommend? I know like. Sometimes I get into analytical mind and I'm like, okay, concentrate, focus, come on, write, but, and I'm trying to be in a flow state and everything else, but what would you recommend to people that have hard time? So am I making this up? Am I just like my ego writes this?
No, I would just see, everybody can do it. It's just a matter of letting go and allowing it to come through. I couldn't write in full sentences when I first started to do it. So some people will just get a word, some people might get a phrase, and then you might start getting sentences, and then you might start getting, paragraphs. I would say that since it is a written form of meditation, to just get yourself into that meditative state, whatever way that you do that, if in fact you do that in your private practice, when you're meditating, have that paper and pen available to you right then and there, and see if it'll transfer from the what you're getting in meditation to the paper, because it's like, they say prayer is you talking to God, meditation is God talking to you, but soul writing is you taking notes. So as you're meditating, if you're getting images or you're getting messages, you might want to start writing those down and then see if out of that you'll get if you practice it. What the handout that I gave you gives you a list of optimal ways to start doing the writing. Okay, so if you want to just follow that, one of the things that Casey says to do is to always like make a date with spirit and say, okay, I'm going to be writing every day at 9:30 at night, 9:30 to 10. I'm making this date with spirit, and I'm going to be, and then they know that you're going to be want to write that, and they'll show up, so to speak, to do the writing with you. So that's one of the ways of just getting into the habit, establishing a place in your home that's conducive to this kind of work. So if you have a room that, that means something to you spiritually, it reminds you of your spiritual journey. You might have, candles or incense or totems or bells or, your artwork or something like that. That sets the stage for you to do the writing. So I would just practice every night. It doesn't have to take long to do it. Just just say that prayer of protection, surround yourself with that white light. Some people don't get written messages, they get pictures. So if you're an artist, it would be okay to draw a picture. If you're a composer or a musician, you can use the same process and get the message that way. So Carol mentioned about what I was working on right now. I just finished actually writing a book about the Beatles and spirituality. It, it's called The Inner Light, how did the Beatles plant the seed of spirituality in our souls? And as I'm doing the research on this, I found out that both Paul McCartney and John Lennon used a method of soul writing to write their music. Some of their music, Yesterday, Let It Be, Across the Universe, all of that came to them through the same process of soul writing that I described to you. So it takes on many, many different forms, but the process is always the same. Okay, so whatever you're comfortable with, just go with that. So the important part is the meditation. So if you do that every night or every day, whenever you do it, just put the pen on paper. It's just stream of consciousness writing. You do have to get out of the way to let it come. So just practice it, and you might not, maybe that's not the right avenue for you, although from my perspective, it's the right avenue for everybody. So, so anyway, those are some tools to kind of get you started. It's, it's like I said, I think of it as that 24/7 phone home card. We got it when we came from spirit into the human body that got tucked into our little backpacks as we came into the earth. So do keep practicing, because I know you'll get something very profound and worthwhile if you do.
I had thoughts coming to my head and that's what I was writing.
That's fine. That's a good start. Yeah, that's a good start. Because after a while, the thoughts will just translate right immediately into the words, into the writing. There won't be any, you won't have to transfer it. In other words, it'll just automatically flow. So you're well on the road. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
I have another question. I make it as a question, then I give you my statement to explore or describe what I think. My question is how much physical ability has to do with this writing? And explanation is personally, I never experienced soul writing. I have done 2-3 of your workshops and tried it during the meditation, but I don't go anywhere. But it just came to me today in this workshop that because I have a lot of traumas in my system in general, in my soul and my body. So as Carol always said, like an onion, you're peeling it. I'm trying to do that. I'm working on it past 2-3 years. So I think my nerve system is so overloaded that connection between my soul and with my physical body is not in alignment. That's why I have some physical pain, fatigue, and physical pain that comes, and I get mentally shut down. Sometimes, like I have to stop going to work for one day and just rest because I can't take it in. And I think all of this has connection with why someone like me would not explore it at this stage as life. I believe it's accessible to everybody. It's like meditation. Everybody can meditate. Everybody can connect with their own higher self. And everybody can write, so write. But it has to somehow with the physical body, connection with physical body. So I just want you to validate my understanding or tell me not.
Absolutely. There are situations in which the writing will not happen. And I tell this to people that, for instance, if you're on any kind of certain medications, especially if you're on medication for depression or something like that, anything that will either speed up your metabolism or slow your metabolism down will impact your ability to write. So that includes like foods that you eat, things that you drink, besides any kind of a drug. But if the body is processing something at a very deep level like that, then all the energy is focused in on that, and that may impede the writing. But eventually, I think that the writing would be able to break through if you just want to keep trying, because the writing in many ways would help you to process what's going on physically. All right. So, but you're right. I mean, there are circumstances in which the writing is a little bit more challenging than for somebody else. There are, just like with regression, there are people who come to me for regression, and no matter how many scripts I use, every trick of the trade that I know of to help them get into that state, they can't get there, or else they only get they say everything is black. They're not getting any images at all. They're stuck. There's an obstacle, like a wall that's been put up. There's a reason for that. I don't know what that is. They don't know what that is, but it's there. So it may take a little bit longer, just keep chipping away at it, but eventually I think it'll help. And thank you for taking my other workshops. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else before we say goodbye? Okay,
Joanne, may I add something?
sure.
Sorry, I had to step out to a powder room, and when I came back, I think I heard you said you're doing some research on Beatles.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I just want to share something with you. When you were presenting your slides and that particular line, you've said, well, somebody had to be him or her. I have written down that John Lennon came to me. I don't know if you can see, it's my notes.
I can't, it's all blurry.
Yeah, John Lennon came to connect, to acknowledge his presence with Joanne, and he is worried about his wife.
Yes.
Just wanted to share that with you, Joanne. I thought it's just,
Wow.
I was sitting there, why John Lennon? I'm just listening to Joanne presenting, and then John Lennon shows up.
You know what? This also will show you how old I am. I was president of Beatles fan club from 1960. And I was there in the beginning. I was there when they broke up and everything was shut down. All the clubs were shut down. And so I had sort of the inside track about what was going on. And I kept all my newsletters from all those years when I was a teenager, writing. So I was so immersed in the Beatles, and then I got immersed in metaphysical work. And it never, when I got older, I kept wondering, how did a Catholic Italian American girl from the South Side of Chicago go from the Beatles to past life researcher? Because nobody in my neighborhood nobody talked about reincarnation. It was like a foreign thing. And I thought, I wonder if, because I was so immersed in the Beatles, if they planted a seed that subconsciously was there all those years, but didn't get activated until 20 years later. Shirley MacLaine is out with Out on a Limb, right? So that's what prompted me to write this book. I wanted to figure out myself what was going on with me, that how did I develop this insatiable appetite for knowing about reincarnation? Because there was nothing in my background that would have even suggested I go that route. That's why I started to look. I thought maybe it was those years with the Beatles. And sure enough, it was. And I did a lot of interviews with other Beatle fans who also had similar experiences. But the fascinating thing for me was all this research about mostly John and Paul and George. Ringo wasn't too much into it. And about John and Yoko, and they had their own like live-in psychic, their own tarot reader. They were into reincarnation. They were, there's just so much that as Beatle fans, we knew nothing about any of this. They didn't, it wasn't until I actually started to go in and find out. But yeah, John was one of the ones who used that process of writing his music, and I just really never knew that. So that sort of helped me to understand him more, and so I'm so glad that he's kind of hanging out. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Layla. I appreciate that so much.
Thank you, Layla.
Okay. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, you could go to my website, which is joannedimaggio.com. And all the information about my books and about private sessions is on that website.
Thank you. Well, let's give Joanne a big round of applause. Thank you so much. It is wonderful to share all these different practices with you all. And, one might work for you in one moment and not in another. And so it's good to have all these tools in your toolbox to help you with your process. So thank you again. I'm going to stop the